Great. So, Dr. Naidu, thank you so much for coming through today. I really do appreciate it. Now, I've known you now for quite a while, and I do classify you as a friend. And the conversation that we have is pretty much of a friend, and there's a lot of deep conversations that we usually have. And I thought, you know what, let's put this on a video. Let's share the word and let's get the message out there. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I would think people have towards doctors today is this idea that if you are sick, if you are having any issues with whatever it is, the misconception is that the first thing you have to do is go to a doctor. You should go to a GP. And I know a lot of people who they get an earache and immediately they go to a doctor. Now, a lot of people have become so paranoid, particularly after COVID. That's the first thing they do. And the reason why I bring this question up is, what is it that people should be thinking when they do get sick?
Yeah, so there are many reasons why a patient comes to a doctor. And so, broadly we can classify it as an acute problem, something new, or short term, maybe like a cold, a chronic problem, something long-standing, and it could also just be an administrative reason. They need a form filled, or even a sick note is an administrative reason. And then if you look even deeper, you find that patients come in not necessarily, so what prompts them to come in? So there's different things, right? So for example, I could have a cold and I'll just stay at home. Whereas another person will have a cold and would come to the doctor. So like, why? And so we talk about things like, for example, we call it limit of anxiety. So when a patient reaches their limit of anxiety, when they're too anxious about a particular symptom, they come in. And that sort of will explain why some people would have a problem for months or even years and not come in. And then something makes them more anxious. Maybe it's a conversation with someone. Maybe it's a new symptom. Maybe it's something they saw on TV. So they come in for that. And then you have something called limit of tolerance, where people can tolerate quite a bit of suffering before they seek help, depending on the individual, of course. But so then you also have something called limit of tolerance, where people would try their best to cope with whatever it is, and then they reach their limit of what they can tolerate. And that limit of tolerance can be brought about by anything, because increased stress could reduce your tolerance to pain. For example, depression can reduce your tolerance to pain. So you have all of these factors, fear and so on. So this is sort of the broad idea of why does someone present to the doctor.
Yeah.
And that's why you have this variation, right? You have this variation of people who would, and you sort of almost, you will see this, you might see this in, for example, a new mother. She's got her first baby, and anything's wrong with the baby, she for good reason, she panics, and then she comes in very often for minor complaints or things that the baby's fine, but so that such a patient needs a lot of reassurance. But there you have to also explore, why is she coming in? What is her support? And the fact of the matter is that today we don't have much support.
Absolutely.
So we live in a world where we are sort of a city of individuals. We don't have a lot of support. Sometimes our parents are far away, or we don't live with our parents, whatever it may be. And so we don't get that reassurance of that grandmother who would reassure and treat you. And that used to be what would happen before, So you only really come to the doctor once once even that, those things, home remedies and so on, doesn't work.
Yeah.
But now that's the problem, yeah.
So, what's so interesting, as you're saying this, what comes to my mind is you mentioned support. Now, I feel like, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like we've lost a sense of what a role of a doctor used to be, or what was it designed to be. And I feel like a role of a doctor was there to support. That was the first reason, and I'm thinking about way back when doctors was a thing, when it first started. It was there to support. It was there to help, to guide. It wasn't, and I feel like, I don't know, I just have a sense that we've almost lost that. We've lost that sense of support. Now, very interesting, most people who get sick, flu for example, it's a very common cold, and most people know what to take. Most people know, they have the cabinets ready and they know, let's take this, let's take that. But certain people still would prefer to go to a doctor, and I feel this is the reason, is that support. Because there's still this uncertainty of, yes, I do feel like it's a cold, but it might be something else. And so I'd rather go to a doctor for peace of mind. And I think this is so important, that support. It is giving your patients peace of mind that it is only this. You don't have to freak out about anything else. And yes, continue taking this, or maybe add this into your medication, but you don't have to worry.
I think that's a very good point what you're saying, because the thing is, as would probably most GPs say, the most common presentations are your colds, flus, allergies, your minor complaints. And for me, it remains still intriguing, because that's also a window into how a patient views their health. They would tell me, look, I had to come in because I have this thing next week, whatever, and I just want to get better. Or I've got this, I just want to get better. Or I'm worried about my parents. So something always comes up, you know what I mean? And even though it's a cold or flu, many patients are coming in because they just want reassurance. The unfortunate thing is that because there's a forever increasing need for medical care, many practices are overrun and overwhelmed. And so they're coming actually inherently for support, but all you're getting is a prescription of 1, 2, 3 meds, which you've got a whole cabinet full at home anyway. And so that's sort of the feeling. So patients, they won't feel like, they'll always be like anxious. Am I going to get worse? And we know stress does make things slightly worse.
Yeah.
You take a little bit longer to recover. So I think the point you're making is very true. So doctors, the word doctor comes from it's eventually derived from Latin, which is education, and is to draw out, is a teacher. A doctor is actually a teacher. And so that is the whole aspect. It's all about empowering people and empowering communities. And the one thing you don't want to do is disempower, to say, no, you need me. I need to prescribe all of these things. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen. And so this becomes a reinforcing loop. But once you have a doctor encounter in which you're reassured, the majority, 99% of your upper respiratory tract infections are viral. There's nothing really you can do to make it end faster. Antibiotics are not needed and can actually cause harm. And what is really needed is rest, and people are not resting. Especially after COVID, the expectation is now you must just work from home.
Yeah.
The expectation is you must work from home. There's so many patients who I say, all right, listen, you need to rest. They've got a heart rate of 120 while they're sitting and looking at me. They need to rest, but so let me write you a sick note. No, there's no need, I'm working from home. Now that's not really rest. So that's just going to prolong your recovery. You really need to rest. But I mean, so once you have that encounter in which this is where you see, okay, this is the formula, this is what you do, then you're more likely to do that again later. You know, you're more likely to do it again later.
You said something so profound. You know, you said the dox is derived from it's Latin. It's derived from the Latin origin, which means to educate, to draw out. And I feel that is so true. It is, and the only way you can lessen someone's anxiety is by educating them. The only way you can take away their fear is through education. And I do feel, and I'm not going to say every doctor because it is inaccurate for me to say that, but I do feel because of the demand, because of how our lifestyles have evolved, there's so much stress that doctors are now forgetting about the education bit and only prescribing. And I think we need to come back to that form of education to empower through reassurance that you don't need antibiotics and explaining why you don't need the antibiotics, not just saying you don't need antibiotics, here you go. The explanation is more important than the actual prescription itself. And I think that's so important. The other thing that you said was rest. I don't think people understand what it means to rest. People think that resting is a physical, sort of a physical activity of not doing anything. It is not physical, it is a mental state. Rest is a mental state that people are, I don't think they realize that. And I would love for you to speak on what should one do to rest? How would you educate one to become or get into this restful state? Is there anything that you could share on that? Because I think that's brilliant. If everyone could just understand the difference between the two, I think that'll be fantastic.
Look, I think that's a good point. I myself struggle with resting because I tend to get a lot of anxiety when, for example, when I go on leave, or I struggle to take a break kind of thing. And a lot of people suffer from this problem where they struggle to switch off. And, you know, if they just spend time with themselves, they're anxious. They have to have a phone, they have to have YouTube, they have to have this, that. And so, you know, this is a problem. Okay, this definitely is a problem. So what I've noticed is that often when we try not to do something, it's very hard. When you try not to do something. So when you try, you know, not to stress, you get more stressed.
Yeah.
You know, when you try to not work, you end up thinking about work all the time. So what I'm sort of going into this a little bit to think about it more broadly, even when it comes to diet and so on. Because even in diet, we say, don't eat this, don't eat that. But for me, I want to say, what must you do? What must you eat?
Yeah.
So actually do something active. And you find this happens. When you want to take a break, you go on a holiday. There's something that you're doing actively. You go to a beach, you go and explore, you go to a museum, whatever it is. You're actually doing something. And that causes your mind and your body to rest far more than trying to just be on the couch not doing anything. It just doesn't work. And like I've noticed, you could almost directly correlate how much of YouTube I watch when I'm not allowing myself to properly rest, but I'm just sort of saying, let me take a break and de-stress, try to make myself rest. My YouTube watching skyrockets.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is it doesn't make me feel rested. But as soon as I open a book, any book, it doesn't have to be even a storybook, it can be a book on health, whatever it is. The feeling is completely different. I have to do something. And that's the thing. So what happens is, I think when patients need to rest, yes, if you're physically exhausted, go to bed, go to sleep. But if not, actually do something. Walk out in the garden and plant a plant. Go and do something. Go and play with your dog. So that's just things around the house. But like actually do something. Because if you don't do that, I don't know. Because you need to have your whole mind, your body engaged in something for everything to just switch inside. That you don't have this constant sort of almost guilt
Yeah.
of doing something. So that is what I've decided. And so when I go on leave, we already plan by the very next day we're on a road trip, or we're going somewhere. The only leave in which that didn't happen was the hard lockdown. The leave during my hard lockdown. But weirdly enough, I found it very restful. I have no idea why. But I actually think people need to actually do things more.
This is coming at the most perfect moment, because and this is it. People are thinking I need to do less, and doing less is not the answer. The answer is, and Joseph Campbell says it, follow your bliss. Do the thing that is purposeful. Do the thing, whether it's your passion or whatever it is, but do something that fuels you. That is the thing that's actually going to give you that sense of rest. And exactly what you said, when you're reading a book on diet or whatever it is that fuels you, that's actually when you experience a sense of rest. It is not just trying to pass time and watch a movie for the sake of watching a movie that's going to bring that. It has been very specific and very direct as to what is it that fuels you. What is it? And so ideally, it is following the thing that fuels you. It is following your passion, your purpose, and discovering that purpose. For me, the thing that causes me to rest is actually journaling, because I'm actively sort of going deep within, and I am conjuring up thoughts and ideas and inspirations, and I'm activating my creative side. I'm physically doing something, but that brings such a great sense of peace. It almost brings a sense of surety and assurance that I am where I'm supposed to be, because I'm working this muscle of passion, this muscle of purpose. And I think that is so important. I think we've lost our drive for passion and purpose because we've become overcome by the strain of fatigue and hustle and bustle that life demands. And this is something that I'm seeing so much more, because my mom, for example, she wakes up 5:30 every morning and finishes 5 o'clock in the afternoon every single day, Monday to Friday. How can you have time to work your passion? How can you delve into following your dreams? There's no room for that. And as a result, yesterday she got a panic attack. She phoned my dad and she said, I need you to take him to the hospital. And in her great and infinite wisdom, she realized I just need to breathe. I just need to breathe. Again, there's an action. I need to do something. And she breathed, and she then allowed herself to calm down. But this is the problem. And I love that you said you have to take action. It's not doing nothing, but there's a specific action that needs to be taken. And sometimes the action is reevaluating your work life. Sometimes that action is reevaluating your relationships. Sometimes that action is reevaluating the way that you've eaten. But it's taking action. I think that is so critical. I had a lady who came in, she was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. Well, not diagnosed, but the doctor said she might have fibromyalgia, and she had full body pain. I was seeing her for about a month or so, and I would alleviate the pain and so forth, but the pain was never completely removed. We realized that the trigger, the thing that caused so much of her pain, was actually work related. She hated her work. Every time she would go into work, her anxiety will build. She then took an actionable step and said, I'm no longer going to be a slave to my work, and she left her job. Kartik, the next day when she came in, her pain was gone, because she took off this burden that she's been carrying. And so this is really important to me because I see how people are coming in with back pain, foot pain, knee pain, neck pain, and we do the exercises, we do the stretches and so forth, and the breathing, and they feel good, but there's this cycle.
That's it, yeah.
Because they're not looking at the true cause. And sometimes it's difficult. I understand. You can't just change your job like that. You can't just get out of a relationship like that. But if this, I'm hoping people are listening, this is a call to action. This is a call to say, you need to do something. Unfortunately, we keep praying and we keep asking the good Lord to help us. And I really do believe that God is saying, it's now our time to take action. We cannot wait and allow things just to happen to us. John Maxwell says, most people live lives through acceptance. They just accept their life. And what you should do is lead your life, direct your life. You choose the way that you want your life to be. And so we need to change that narrative. We no longer should accept, but lead a life worth living.
So let me relieve you from that. There's a lot of times patients come to me with the similar issues. They've got body pains and so on, and just asking them, and then they start. Everything just comes out. They tell me exactly all the stuff that's happening, what's happened to them, everything. And a lot of the time, it's very much self-imposed. They're used to this type of role that they take upon themselves, and they are committed to it. They need to be either the hero or they need to be the savior or whatever it is. And I tell them that your body is telling you something at this point, that your body is actually telling you something. And you got to sort of listen to it. Now, perhaps it's a bit esoteric. I don't quite think so. I'm very much evidence-based. But I do believe that a lot of physical pain is related to our mental and emotional states. A lot of it. And so that's what I tell patients, that this is what's happening. And the thing is, the way you've got to look at your life, like we've got the one thing, time is the ultimate thing that we are limited by. Nothing else. And everyone is limited by time. Some people may have more money or less money, but everyone is limited by time. And based on that, we've heard of people saying, you've got to create a budget, and every month you've got to put so much into your retirement and so much into savings, so much in this. Because if you don't do that, your expenses will just expand to take up that extra money that comes in. And all of us have had that experience. When I look back last week, we called Uber Eats 5 times. 5 times in a week, right? And so so things will just expand whether you know it or don't know it. It happens. So similarly, you've got so much of time in the day, and then as soon as you say, okay, there's no real difference between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock, guess what expands to take up that time? The easiest thing, which is usually work. Work expands to take up that time. Then COVID came, and we're working from home, and then there was no time limit. You'll start on your computer at 7 in the morning, you'll end up at 6 in the evening. You haven't even gone to shower yet. And the expectation just keeps carrying on like this. So what now is expanding to take up this limited resources? It's not money, it's not time, it's work. So the only way, just like when you want to optimally manage your finances, is to right up front allocate this to savings, allocate that to investments, allocate this to tax, whatever, so that what you've got left with is what you've got left with. Just the same, you need to do the same thing with your time. And so what I say is that what I've realized is what happens with me. So the only way I can do that is if I make time commitments. So I have a trainer, a personal trainer, which I go to for my exercise. So I have that hour cut out, which I will not be using for it otherwise. That hour is now dedicated. If we make a ritual at home, we're going to walk the dog every evening at this time, no matter what, that time is taken care of. It's done. If I'm going to visit my parents every weekend for Sunday lunch, this is non-negotiable. It's cut out. So what's left to expand? Work only has so much it can infiltrate into. That's the only way. You've got to look at time as a limited resource, because it's a limited resource. None of us have all the time available. Time is finite. And so for example, right? If I know I'm off on a certain day, or I'm finishing work a certain day, I'll be calling my friends the day before, whatever, and say, hey, do you want to go for coffee? Hey, you want to do lunch, or whatever. And because I've noticed with me is I get energy from people. Like, I love being with people. So that's what I do. Now, oftentimes, because I'm running my own business now, when I'm off, other people are still working. So it's not that easy. But then that's what I do. Because I don't feel satisfied just going home and watching a movie. It doesn't work for me. So that's what I think that needs to happen, is people should try and budget and look at their time that way.
Brilliant. And I think each and everyone will have a different time allocation. They will have different things that would suit them better, but it's finding that thing and realizing that if you don't schedule your time, if you don't budget your time, allocate your time, that life will get so overwhelming to the point where work becomes the expansion of everything. And I think that's so profound, because we tend to live a life that is not conscious. We're not conscious about the way that we live our lives. We're not direct. And so we sort of go with the flow, whatever that is. And as a result, we become overwhelmed with work or whatever it is that we usually have that takes over us. And absolutely, I think, we should be more specific as to what it is that we want to do, and start to think about what is it that fuels you. Again, it comes down to this: what fuels you, whether it is baking, whether it is painting, whether it is gardening, playing guitar, singing, meditating, praying, whether it is playing a sport, exercising, but allocate some time, dedicate some time for that. And we've heard this before. We've heard people say that what makes you successful are your habits. What creates your successful people is the thing that you do on a daily basis, that consistency of it. And we've heard this, but I love the way that you brought it across, is that expansion if you do not allocate your time wisely. So I hope people are listening to this, because this is profound.
And the other thing, what I've seen is that I have a lot of elderly patients coming in to my practice. And, for me, it sort of leaves me in tears almost all the time, because many of these people were previously very highly functioning people. They've had either businesses, or they've had, great jobs. They've gone so far in the career. And now they're in a situation where a spouse has passed away, their brother has passed away, all their friends have passed away. I mean, they feel completely alone. So what their world has now become, and so everything expands to fill this bottle, right, is their child's family. So they're living with a child, and that's their world. That's their world. And what they don't realize is that it's sort of now the opposite situation that's happened. Is whereas they had this much of time when they were younger, and work filled everything, perhaps, I'm not saying, but now everything is shrunk. And all that occupies them is the ongoings of their child's family.
Yeah.
And because they just have nowhere else to turn. And then I tell them, you've got to re-expand your life now. You've got to expand it. Because, you know, you've got probably so much of value to give to the world, but all you're doing is doing errands for your child, or picking up the grandkid, or doing a bit of cooking, or doing this or doing that. But I mean, you've got so much more you can offer. And why not try and do something? Maybe once a week. If you love animals, volunteer at SPCA. You know, 2 hours a week or something. If you like, just find something that you can do, that you can go to, where there's people involved. That's very important. People must be involved. And that will give you so much that will re-expand your life. And you know, so that's what I've been telling people, is that that's what they should be doing now, you know, because parents want to sort of be there for their kids. But the human spirit is not like that.
Yeah.
It is wanting to forever expand. No matter how old you get, it doesn't matter. You always want to expand. Now you're shrinking it. And in your life, your family, you were taking care of. You were taking care of your parents to a great extent. You were taking care of your parents. And you were working. And you were doing this or that and the other. I mean, that was big, right? Yeah. And now you're getting old and this is your life. And so sort of the opposite effect is happening, you know what I mean? And so I think that is something I try and remind a lot of elderly folk who come, because yeah, they've lost meaning, and it is very hard. I cannot even imagine it, to be honest. I don't know who thought of this idea, or I don't know if it was you, but someone told me this. They had an idea about rent a granny or rent a granddad. Did you get that? Someone, it was such a brilliant idea to me. It was like, I felt it was the most amazing thing, because, you know, we're in a world now where children or even young people, they need the love of a grandparent, and they don't have it. The love of guidance. And you have grandparents who feel unneeded. And I was like thinking, I mean, really, there should be something like rent a granddad. I think it would work very well. Someone did think of that idea. I just cannot remember now.
That's brilliant. It's almost like a big brother sort of type of thing, you know. And you know what she's saying is giving back. There's, particularly with the senior population who have so much wealth of wisdom, and they can give back, and they have the capacity to give back, but because of the pain that they might be experiencing through the passing of their loved ones, they focus so much on the pain. And what you're trying to say is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but expand your awareness beyond the pain and see that you have the capacity to give and to touch someone else and be there for someone else and to lend a helping hand. And I think this is so important. This actually reminds me of there's a talk that I listened to, and this guy, he coaches basketball players. And when I say coach, like live coaching, and he noticed that most of the basketball players, the reason why they're so successful is not because they play for themselves. They dedicate their lives, and to put it into context, this is more of your African American population. They dedicate their lives, funny enough, for their grandmother. There's something about a grandmother, particularly a grandmother, I don't know what it is, but most of them dedicate their life because they want to improve their grandmother's life, because they understood how much she sacrificed for them. And so it is doing something beyond yourself for someone else that I think is so, so important. There's another saying, Mother Teresa never did it for the one, she did it for the many. You have to look beyond yourself and understand that as a tree is rooted into the ground, it provides shade for everyone who is willing to receive the shade, but you have to be willing to receive the shade. And so it's very important to understand that you as a living being are there to provide shade, but you have to make sure that you have to be in that space to provide the shade, to give of yourself. And so self-awareness is quite important, to understand the role that you have and as a grandmother, as a grandfather, they have such a critical role to play in providing shade for others. And I'm not sure if there's anything else that you'd like to add to that. If not, I'd love to change it up a bit.
Okay.
So I had a lady who messaged me. She emailed me this week, and she said to me that her sibling, I've never known this lady. This is the first time I was in contact with her, and she said, I have my sibling is suffering from depression. He's suicidal, and he needs help. And I'm making this. I would love to know how you can just help him. He just needs to get out. He just needs to do something, just so he gets out of this rut, out of this whatever. And she asked me for my rates. She asked me how much I offer, what I charge. And I sent her my fees and all of that. And I said to her, please don't let this be the limiting factor or the deciding factor as to why you do not come. I'm more than happy to negotiate the price, but make sure your sibling comes in. I haven't heard from her since. She reached out to me, and I could see the sincerity of her message, that it was very much heartfelt and almost desperate. And I wondered, was it the fees that sort of caused her not to come in, even though I mentioned to her that, don't let this be the limiting factor. And I bring this up because many people don't go to doctors because they feel as if, it's going to be expensive and they're going to spend time with me for 5 minutes. What's the point? Why is it that? And so there's this idea of 5 minutes versus the rate that they charge. Is it, is it justifiable? And this is the thing that's been ongoing, particularly in the specialist physicians. They charge an arm and a leg, and they are known to spend time with you for 5-10 minutes, and that's it. And then off they go. And many clients come to me and they say, was it worth it? And all they did was they just checked my x-rays and said, you're good to go. 1,500 later, they get a bill. What do you say to that as a doctor? You guys put a lot of hours in. You guys have studied for years. And so you earned the title being a doctor. However, I do think there's a missing piece to this. But I'd love for you just to dive in and let's start this conversation and let's see where this conversation goes.
So finances and medicine, it's a difficult topic. But it's something that it's a reality, and it's something that we have to talk about. If one looks at history and like back in antiquity, the healing man or woman, was part of a village and community and was honored. They did not need to earn their keep, They would treat everyone and maintain the health of everyone, and they did not need to earn anything. They were taken care of by the community, and they took care of the community. And to a great extent, there was a long period where it wasn't regarded as it's something that you need to actually earn money from. You can't exchange what you are giving for something. However, that's not the society that we live in anymore. It's not possible anymore. It's not possible anymore because simply is because we don't have a community that's going to sustain you unless you charge something. And the thing is, so that's one thing. The other thing is how much you charge, and is it in relation to your qualification? So look, when it comes to how much someone should pay for something, it's obviously a spectrum, right? because you're not directly paying for someone's time. We've all had the experience where you do something that may take 5 minutes and so much as the charge. We know that. Like, I mean, I don't know, like, I'm just trying to think now of an example. You're selling your house. You know, the lawyers are using a standard document, standard everything. You're just signing a few things and they're getting so much, you know. But, so we know, so it's not a direct correlation with time. Because there's a quantity aspect and there's a qualitative aspect. So you're also paying for that because it's a rare skill. So you pay for something that's rare as well, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You don't just pay for time. You pay for something that's rare. You also pay for something that is valued, and that may be valued more, irrespective of the rareness or the time.
Yeah.
For example, I mean, gold. What value does gold have? I mean, in terms of its functional, in terms of its perceived, yeah. So we've ascribed a value to it, you know, and we value it, you know. So you know, it's difficult. Some people would say, look at what soccer players earn, millions, and you know, right? So you'd say, okay, is that justified? Well, I don't know. They're earning more than a president probably, but I don't know, because it's valued, highly valued, and part of what they do is maintain a system of entertainment, which itself is highly valued.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? They're part of the grand system. And they also, so in that case, when you become sort of an international soccer player, you're also being paid because you're rare.
Yeah.
You're a rare find, right?
Yeah.
But it's also because we value sports. There's rare finds in the Olympics.
Yeah.
There's rare finds in the Olympics. People who've done their whole life for skill, and no one can beat them, but it doesn't bring as much of money as soccer does, right?
Yeah.
So you see, so there's all these things, right? So, so I guess what has to be sort of taken into account is that it's not necessarily a direct translation. You spend 15 minutes with the doctor, therefore you must be charged 15 minutes. And because you're also paying a bit for that skill that is a rare skill.
Yeah.
You're also paying for a need that would otherwise not be satisfied. You know, a health need, for example.
Yeah.
And then the other thing as well is that sometimes, for whatever reason, to get to the problem could take an hour. It could take an hour to get to the problem, say, versus someone else, the problem might be so obvious for whatever reason. Maybe there's a blood test that just picks up the problem very quickly, and you can make the diagnosis in 5 minutes. And so you see what I'm saying? There's all these variables, and then so now okay. So that's the other thing, and then the other thing as well is the medico-legal risk. Now we know that you know, doctors get sued, for example, right? If you make a mistake, or whatever it is, and so we pay medical indemnity insurance. But all healthcare professionals in the private sector have to do this, or should be doing this. And so, but the fees for different specialities or different parts of medicine or allied healthcare is dramatically different based on the risk.
Yeah.
So there are some specialities where you are paying a 1.5 million rand a year for your insurance.
Yeah.
You have to make 1.5 million rand just to cover your insurance. Okay, forget about anything else, just to cover your insurance. Okay, so now, so that specialist who looked at that X-ray and gave you an opinion in 5 minutes. By giving that opinion, that is a consultation. And yes, a hallway consultation, a quick thing, is not a good idea. You should have a proper consultation. At least sit the patient down. You say, even if it takes 7 minutes instead of 5 minutes, that's what you should do. but he is putting his, not, I won't say job on the line, but you get what I'm saying. He's committing to this is fine. Okay?
Yeah.
With the risk, and the risk is always there because we can never know 100% anything,
Yeah.
right? We can never know 100% anything. Nothing is 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that risk still remains. There could be something wrong. Maybe he's missing something. Who knows? Maybe the X-ray didn't work properly,
Yeah.
etc., etc. Maybe the patient has a unique thing that doesn't show up on X-rays. Whatever it is. So that exists,
Yeah.
and so you need to be covered for that. Yeah, that's sort of.
So, we mentioned, the perceived value, and as humans, when we purchase something, it'll be a good buy when we perceive the value that we received in relation to what I've paid for, sort of it matches up. That is how I, as an individual, a customer, a client, a consumer, could feel as if this is a justifiable transaction, because that's what it is. It's a transaction if I perceive it to be valuable. And I think what happens is we do not add value. We are lacking the ability to add value, and I include myself in this because and I think we've because of the hustle and the bustle, and we need to see as many clients or patients as possible, we forget to add value, and we forget to sit down and really do a thorough job and get to know them, not just the body but their minds, because the mind and body, it's connected. You cannot separate the one from the other. And so just to prescribe medication for the body and not to be cognizant of their mind and their states of being in this particular moment in time is, you only doing them injustice. So I think that perceived value is quite important, and the way that you add value is by really understanding them. And I'm not saying it, and it definitely has no correlation to time, because we've now established that the time, it is not about the time, but it's about the quality of that time. Did I really listen to you? Did I really take the time to get to know you physically as well as mentally? That sort of thing. So I think increasing that perceived value is so important. As a doctor, how do you think one can add value or more value? Because I think you guys play such a critical role, and I think that's also why there's this mistrust when it comes to doctors. And I think there's this trend now where people are not going to doctors anymore because they almost feel like they are charlatans. They're just taking money and not really caring anymore. People want to be cared for. People want to be seen, fully seen and listened and understood. And I think doctors were known for this back in the day. They would just listen and allow the person to speak without judgment, without needing to jump in and say, no, you should, just listen. And I think we've lost that element as practitioners. And I include myself in that because we work with people. And I'm very happy you were saying all that you're saying, because what you're saying is exactly correct. What's happened as doctors is we become very clinical. We become puzzle solvers, problem solvers, and often we run our practice like a sausage factory, and that is something that shouldn't happen. Because like you say, the perceived value, you can spend 5 minutes and the patient can feel that opinion on that x-ray was worth it, because you explained, you understood, you gave a follow-up plan, what's going to happen if this happens, what do you need to do, do you need to repeat the x-ray in a year, where are we, recap the previous, and so on and so forth. And research, time and time again, this is what the researchers showed. The researchers showed that you will very unlikely to be sued if you make a mistake. People who get sued are not people who make a mistake, because people are not stupid. People know, doctors are humans, medical professionals are humans, we make mistakes. It's a people
who felt, almost like disrespected or
Yes.
dehumanized, or like
Yes.
you didn't care about them. Those are the people you didn't communicate with respect, whatever it is. Those are who get sued, right? Invariably, I mean overwhelming, like over 95% of law cases. That's it. The research shows that the time it takes, I might be getting it wrong, I'm just trying to think, but the average time it takes for a doctor to interrupt the patient when the patient is saying what's wrong, I think it's 20 seconds.
Sure.
That is how good we are at listening. That 20 seconds.
Wow.
There's another research that shows if you just spent 80 more seconds, it was 1 minute 10 seconds, 1 minute 20 seconds. If you just spent 80 more seconds touching the patient, I can't remember the numbers, but it dramatically improves the experience on all levels, both from the patient perspective and the physician perspective. It reduces burnout in doctors. It reduces stress, it reduces burnout, it increases satisfaction by touching the patient.
That's brilliant.
And it's culturally specific. Like in India, the idea there is that there's this probably comes from Ayurveda or something, the ancient Indian form of medicine where everything can be diagnosed from your pulse. So the first thing that's expected when a doctor comes to you is to feel your pulse. And if you can just do that, the patient gets very happy. Okay, but there's these different, in different cultures, they have different ideas of what a doctor must do. But invariably, one of the biggest complaints patients have is they don't get touched.
Sure.
And if you even look at, and you'd think the opposite, right? I mean, we had two men here discussing this. We had two men discussing this. But if you ask breast cancer patients, majority of them would say they trust the doctor that touches their breasts. They trust the doctor that even re-examines their breasts after they've done the MRI, after they've done the biopsy, and so on. That is who they trust, And you think to yourself, shucks, okay, firstly, you do feel awkward. Okay, you're going to ask a woman, can I examine your breasts? But you feel even worse. You're going to ask a woman who's had breast cancer, whatever. It's a sensitive area. You feel even worse for them, but it's opposite.
Wow.
It's opposite. And it comes down to the fact that we are human beings. We need that human connection. That touch is very important. Touch has always been the cornerstone of care.
Yeah.
And that's why you always see, there are circumstances where patients will complain about the nurses, but invariably, more than not, the nurses are comfort for the patient and the doctors are the problem. You see what I mean?
Yeah. That's it.
Because,
we're touching on some very, very important points here. And the thing that you're emphasizing is whether you're a doctor, a physio, a biokinesis, a chiropractor, you need to do a full examination. You need to touch your client. You need to palpate. You have to assess. Do it to your best ability and listen, which is patient history taking. That's so important. Listen. I'm not saying speak about your grandmother and how's the kids doing, Susie, and Akshay, man, I'm not saying do that. What I'm saying is we have to, if you're going to, as a doctor, as a bio, as a physio, you are required to do a full evaluation and do it to your best ability. Make sure that you palpate and make sure you're taking patient history, make sure that you're doing whatever it is that your profession requires you to do and do it well. And whether it's insecurity that you have to work through in order to provide that, so be it. Because it's not only going to benefit you, but it's going to benefit your patient at the end of the day. I mean, I absolutely love this conversation. I think it was so needed. I didn't realize we were going to go to this point or touch on these points. And we can speak about this forever. But there's going to be a part 3 or part 2 in terms of carrying over this conversation. If there's one thing that you could leave us with today, based on the conversation we've had, if there's one nugget of truth that you would love the listeners, the doctors, the physios, the buyers to take away from today's conversation, what would that be?
I probably think it would be the idea of charity. What I mean by that is to be charitable. In other words, you think, you give the benefit of the doubt to the person. You think the best of the person, whoever that other person is. Because too often we're just too critical. And we're not charitable enough anymore. And that applies to all of us, you know. Give the chance to the patient to say what he has to say, to relate his problems, even though it's not making sense, it's fine. And vice versa, give the chance to your doctor to in his way also direct the consultation. And if he doesn't get it right, or she doesn't get it right, don't go to another doctor. Go back to the same doctor and say, Doc, this didn't work. Can we do what else? Then they do something else. Not because they got it wrong because of a mistake. It's a process by which we go through it. And then the same thing with other professionals. You find doctors treat each other terribly. They criticize what other people do, other doctors do, you know. When the patient said, you know, when this doctor did this, and then you as a doctor go, oh my God, are you serious? No, don't do that. Be charitable. If the physio told the patient this, don't say, no, that doesn't make sense, you know. Be charitable to everyone, because ultimately all of us we are trying to do our best, and we're trying to care. We're in the business of caring for people. And one of the things we have to do is accept our humanity. So my take on word would be charitable. Be charitable.
Amazing. Dr. Naidoo, Karthik, my friend, thank you for being charitable with your time today, coming out and speaking such words of wisdom and truth. And I believe that these words will touch so many people, because we're speaking from a humanity point of view. We're speaking from a patient-centric point of view. And I think many people would agree with what we're saying today. So thank you so much for coming out and spending time with me.
Thanks,
Really
Karen.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for the opportunity.